MatchMaker.fm connects podcasters and guests. Welcome to Matched, the show where we talk to some of the most incredible guests available for an interview right now. I'm your host, James Mulvany, founder of MatchMaker.fm, and this is Matched. Hey, it's James, and welcome to another episode of Matched. Today I'm joined by Sheppard. How's it going, Sean?
Good, James, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. So start off just by introducing yourself and tell us what you do.
Sure. My name is Sheppard. I'm a serial tech entrepreneur. I've started 5 companies. I've had 3 successful exits. I am very much focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, education, technology, and helping my portfolio of startups find product market fit.
Yeah, so you've done some VC investment as well?
Yes, I started Growthx about 7 years ago. We're a seed stage venture capital fund. We invest in B2B technology companies. We have an accelerator program that's designed to help them develop markets and make money. Unlike traditional accelerator and incubator programs that are focused on developing products and raising money, we license that to other innovations, developing new digital products and services, building startup ecosystems, things like that.
Very good. So let's start off with a couple of icebreakers. If you had your own late night talk show, who would you invite on as your first guest?
Probably Dave Chappelle. Just because I think he's probably one of the most interesting and intelligent voices in society today. I think he's fascinating. I've followed his career closely, and I love what a clear, independent thinker he is. And to me, cool. I think there's nothing more important than people who can think for themselves, because if you don't think for yourself, someone else is going to do it for you.
I think that's good advice, sound advice there, Sean. And next up, if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Human behavior. Trying to best understand why people do what they do and how to help them improve themselves.
It's one of these things, isn't it, that I think, it's an interesting, could you ever become an expert instantly in human behavior? I think it's something that you kind of learn all the time, constantly. I don't think you can ever kind of completely master it almost.
No, I don't know if you ever can. But I also think the greatest learners recognize that generally, that mastery is in its purest form is unattainable.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about podcasting. I'm curious to hear what you like about podcasting, how you got involved in it in the first place.
What I love about podcasting, especially, is what I would say my favorite thing about podcasting is the ability to have long form, deep discussions that allow people to think openly and freely. And I think that's missing from society today. I think social media has created a very difficult medium for having conversations like that. And I don't think it's been good for us.
Do you think it's impacted everyone, or do you think it's impacted kids who are growing up at the moment more so?
Well, I could wax philosophical and say it impacts the people negatively that allow it to impact them negatively. I think it's had an impact on everyone to some degree, certainly. I don't think our brains are wired to take in information at the pace and rate in which we do based on social. And I don't think that people are very much allowed to think for themselves and speak openly and honestly about things. And, that's how we work things out, is through conversation. And if we're not allowed to have those conversations, things don't get worked out. And I think you see what you see right now as a result.
Do you think... what is it about podcasting you think allows people to digest? Is it just because the length of the podcasts, you've got to give it your attention for 20, 30, 40 minutes versus just 13 seconds or whatever it is on Facebook video?
Yeah, I think context matters. And I think I think society places too much importance and emphasis on the written word. I do believe it's important, but I think they've I think they've placed way too much emphasis on the written word, and you lose what I think is the most important part of any real conversation, which is context. And you get that context in a podcast format. You can absorb and try to understand perspectives and tonality and the life experiences of where someone is coming from and why they say what they say and think what they think and do what they do a lot better in a live podcast setting than you can in asynchronous communication. Different time, different place interactions.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's great. And I'm curious to know, what do you have an opinion as to why podcasting has just had this kind of resurgence recently? Obviously, it's not a new form, but it's certainly grown a lot in popularity over the last 2-3 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with the success of Joe Rogan. And obviously he's been doing his stuff for 11 or 12 years now. But I think, again, the idea of this long form podcast that is very much centered around curiosity and humility and this pursuit of trying to understand and learn is very attractive. I think, like anything with technology, there's an emergence that happens, or a convergence that happens between the market wanting to return to the days of having person-to-person interactions, long-form conversations, the freedom to take it in any direction they want. We consume media today in 30-second sound bites, or 145 characters on Twitter or Facebook, etc. This allows for, I think podcasting in this form is the one piece of different place technology that most closely mimics what real life, in-person, human-to-human interaction is all about.
Yeah, and I think also the age-old thing of you used to pick up the phone to someone and have a conversation. That doesn't happen as much anymore, and it is like a duplicate of that almost, isn't it?
There's that, and then there's certainly, obviously, the pandemic situation has forced people to make this change and adopt new mediums in order to get that basic human need of connection. And I'm fascinated by it, and I think podcasters and I think guests, and then ultimately from a commercial perspective, from a business model standpoint, those who want to leverage someone's audience have a tremendous opportunity with the podcasting channel, because I think it's very emerging and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I think you see that with the $100 million plus deal that Rogan did with Spotify.
Yeah,
they won't all end up like that, certainly, but it's a key indicator of what's possible. And people crave content, and they crave learning, and they crave, new experiences. And I think podcasting is one of those shiny new objects. But I think it's around. I think it's here to stay, and I hope it has. I hope it has a net positive impact on society, as opposed to what I think is the net negative impact that traditional social media has had.
Interesting. Sean, why did you join MatchMaker?
Well, you reached out to me on LinkedIn early on when you were first getting this started. You may or may not remember it, but you sent me a note, introduced it to me. I went to the website. I looked around. I thought it was intriguing. I created a profile, and before you know it, I had 4 or 5 requests for podcast interviews. And I went, wow, this is interesting. And it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I've been sitting in this chair in my back garden for the last 8 months. I can't even feel my legs anymore. So it's been a wonderful way to get my message out to the world and help others. And that's part of where I am at this stage of my life, is I want to try and give back to as many people as I can. And this is one fantastic way to do it.
Great. And in terms of some of the interviews you've done so far, are there any that stand out to you? Could you tell us about some interesting conversations that you've had?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've had so many. I think I've probably done 25 different podcasts through MatchMaker so far. And I've met some, I think the most important thing is I've met some really interesting, awesome people trying to do good work. And I've met them of all shapes and sizes, everything from, one person businesses all the way up to people that represent, global conglomerates. And we've talked about a wide variety of topics, whether it's startups, entrepreneurship, venture investing, product market fit, education in the innovation economy, what it takes to be a successful mindset, a whole host of different topics and conversations, sales, marketing, design thinking, content marketing, talent, hiring people, dealing with humans. You just name it, and it runs the gamut. And I think my favorite part is that these conversations can go off into many different directions based on the personalities of the people.
What's your favorite thing to talk about? Because obviously, you're an experienced guy. You've been through the process of building up and selling businesses several times. Like, out of all the things you just mentioned there, is there something that you're really like? What's your main passion, do you think?
I think helping others just get what they want out of life, and in what form that is. And it always ends up coming back to human behavior. That's why I answered that question the way I did. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with human behavior. I'm fascinated with why we do what we do. I fancy myself an amateur philosopher and neuroscientist. I'm always studying those things, and I try to, I want to understand why humans behave the way they do, and I want to help others open themselves up to those ideas. I'm always in search of new ideas and new things to think about. So I love education, or learning, as I call it. Education is what other people do to you. Learning is what you do for yourself. I love talking about the future. I love talking about mindset, because I believe that's at the core of what drives people to success, or to getting what they want. And I love entrepreneurship. I love I love helping. I love having the conversation around what can technology do to help make the world a better place. And that's obviously my business. And that's, those are the things I enjoy. I even had, I think one of my favorite ones was, there's a dad podcast, and I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name, and he's in the UK as well. And it was a fascinating chat. Dadpreneur, I believe it's called. And it's about the idea of being an entrepreneur and being a father and a husband or a spouse, and the good and the bad of that kind of world. And I thought it was a lot of fun, because I hadn't had that conversation in public before.
Yeah, and I think this is probably, like, it's interesting you say that, because like people always ask me, like, why did you start in business? Because I started when I was 16. And when I was growing up, my dad had his business, and he, not in technology, he was an antiques dealer, but he always said to me, like, going self-employed, starting his own business, because he had many, many jobs before we were born. And he always said that was the best decision he ever made. And I always think that is like a big game changer for my life and how it's turned out, because I don't think, if he hadn't have been that person saying that when I was growing up, I might have gone down a different route. And so I think that's really interesting. And he said it's, and it's just like he said, it, gave him the freedom. A lot of my friends, their parents were working in the big city, and they wouldn't come see them until like 11 p.m. at night and things. And he always had that freedom. Whereas if he needed to come pick us up from school, he could kind of hop out, and see us. So,
yeah, I think you as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of freedom. You also have a whole different, the entire life experience is different, but again, I look around the world and I see the most successful people, at least in business, are entrepreneurs. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you have an infinite ability or capacity to create wealth for yourself and others. You don't have that infinite capacity if you're slotted into a spot as an employee. And that's not to knock people who have an employee mindset versus an owner mindset. People are built differently. I've had every job I've ever had has been a miserable experience. Working for other people has never been my thing, in terms of an employer. But as an entrepreneur, I work for a lot of people.
Okay, interesting points. And just to finish up, what advice would you give to someone who is, maybe thinking about appearing on podcasts as a guest? Or, they want to sort of, like you said earlier, spread their message, and sort of share the knowledge with the world.
I would say have fun, enjoy it, get to know the person on the other side of the mic. The questions I ask everyone, just functionally, simply, when they want me to be on the podcast is who's your audience? What do they care about? And what are they hoping to learn? To me, content strategy is all around one simple question, and that is answering the questions your audience has. And so figure out who you're talking to. Try to be respectful of the structure of their podcast, how they like to do things. Do your best to be on time, and obviously make sure you're in a place where you get good audio and video, and then try your best to just be honest and authentic in helping their audience answer their questions.
And just to finish up, Sean, if people want to find out more about you or get in touch, how can they do so?
Sure. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can follow me on Twitter, at Sean A. Sheppard, or Instagram. And they can check out the websites of my companies, Growthx.com, gxacademy.com, which is our school that trains people to work in tech companies. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
There is an easier way to get booked onto more podcasts as a guest. Join MatchMaker.fm for free today and start making connections with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you.